Now I know I did a video on the master rules for the Battle for the Underdark set, and with Age of Annihilation coming out, there was a beta rulebook. I'm going to make another shorter video so you don't have to dig through this video to find the rules of the new stuff it added. And I know I also did shadow tiles and rock outcroppings in another video, but they're going to be in this one as well, just so you have a quick summary of what this game introduced and what Age of Annihilation is introducing when it comes out. I'm just going to combine these two because you're more likely to actually get the content from this as it exists right now, but this will help you maybe prepare for some new things that are on the way. So first off is the shadow tiles. When a figure is standing on a shadow tile, if it is small, medium, or large, as long as it has a base in a shadow tile, it rolls 1 extra defense die when rolling combat dice against an attack. Oh yes, and shadow tiles are not considered water for water abilities. That's just something that had to be said in the rulebook, so... The Battle for the Underdark Master Set was the first set to introduce treasure glyphs. Treasure glyphs are normally mobile and can be carried by a unique hero unless otherwise stated in the scenario. Treat treasure glyphs as normal glyphs with the following exceptions. Some scenarios will break these rules. Only a unique hero figure can attempt to pick up or activate a treasure glyph. Remember that uncommon figures are considered unique for all special powers and glyphs. Other figures can land on spaces with treasure glyphs on them, but they cannot attempt to pick them up or activate them unless otherwise stated. Note that any figure may choose to stand on a treasure glyph and not activate it or pick it up, just preventing others from gaining access to it. Treasure glyphs do not force figures to stop when moving onto them like a normal glyph would. However, a unique hero figure that ends its movement on a space with a treasure glyph may attempt to pick it up or activate it depending on the treasure glyph's individual rules. When attempting to pick up or activate a symbol side up treasure glyph, you always roll for a trap before revealing it. You may never roll for a trap on a power side up glyph. Treasure glyphs that have been placed on a figure's army card affect only that figure that is carrying them unless otherwise stated. Treasure glyphs cannot be traded between figures. Treasure glyphs must be first dropped by one figure either voluntarily while moving or by the figure being destroyed and then picked up by another figure at a later time. A unique hero can carry any number of treasure glyphs. For traps, when one of your unique heroes ends its movement on a treasure glyph, can't do them, no traps, power side up. They end their movement on a treasure glyph that is symbol side up, you may attempt to pick up the treasure glyph or activate it, depending on the scenario you're playing. If you do, that figure might be caught by the scenario-specific trap, which would mean that you roll the 20-sided die. If you roll a 1 to 5, you set off a trap. Leave the treasure glyph symbol side up, the scenario-specific trap would then take effect. If you roll a 6 or higher, you did not set off the trap. The figure that landed on the treasure glyph now picks up or activates the treasure glyph. Turn the treasure glyph power side up, remove it from the battlefield, and place it on the figure's corresponding army card, unless otherwise stated in the scenario. That figure now controls that treasure glyph. Note that you do not roll for a trap when landing on a treasure glyph that is power side up. If the scenario you were playing is custom, you and the other players or player will have to agree with what a trap does to a figure that fails to make the roll. Dropping a treasure glyph. At any point during a figure's movement, you may announce that the figure is dropping a treasure glyph. Announce which treasure glyph the figure is dropping and place it power side up onto a space the figure currently occupies. That figure may now continue its movement. Note that you cannot drop a treasure glyph onto a space that already has another glyph or treasure glyph on it. And here's how to lose a treasure glyph. If a figure that is carrying a treasure glyph is destroyed, the glyph is placed power side up onto the space that the figure last occupied. If the space, or spaces for double space figures, already has a glyph or treasure glyph on it, the treasure glyph the figure was carrying is removed from the game instead. If a figure that is carrying more than one treasure glyph is destroyed, the controlling player chooses which treasure glyph to place on the space that the figure occupied. Once each space the figure occupies has a treasure glyph on it, the remaining treasure glyphs, if any, are removed from the game. There were 2 types of treasure glyphs. There was permanent and temporary. permanent glyphs, the power of each permanent treasure glyph is in effect for as long as the figure carries it. And then, temporary treasure glyphs, the power of each temporary treasure glyph takes effect anytime you choose, so choose wisely. A figure must be carrying the treasure glyph to activate its temporary effect. Once the effect completes, the treasure glyph is removed from the game. Now, side note here, this is just my interjection, and I could be wrong, but this wording says the power of each temporary treasure glyph takes effect at a time of your choosing. So if I choose to use this on an opponent's turn, that sounds like a legal move. But, again, I could be wrong, but it doesn't specify anymore in the rulebook, so there. Battle for the Underdark also introduced a new type of card, an uncommon. In addition to uniques and commons, uncommons are uniques in every way except for the fact that you can draft as many uncommon heroes or squads that you want into your army, as long as you have the points to do so. The only difference is that you have to keep track of which uncommon is represented by which army card. So you have to mark them and mark the cards, or come up with some way so your opponent and you will both know which figure is on which card and which figure has which wounds, etc. Other than that, for things that require unique abilities or that reference unique abilities or powers, an uncommon fits. So an uncommon hero can pick up a treasure glyph, for instance. And he's not a rule, but the Dungeons & Dragons branch of Heroscape, which was the last gasp of the game until 2010, introduced Valkrill, a general who has his own weird and kind of goofy lore, but the thing about him is he only has 4 army cards as compared to everybody else's, and he never went anywhere. In the revival of Heroscape, it was mentioned that he's probably tied up in some legal issues with Wizards of the Coast, but he does have his fans and people do want to see him in the game again. Most likely Revna, the new Valkyrie, is going to take Valkrill's spot, but that's just assumption and could be very wrong. There's also Volarak and possibly Thorman coming into the game, but again, some people just want to see Valkrill come back. And because there was no real special rules for them or a place to put them comfortably in a video, the flag bearers are going to get mentioned in this video. They were a set of Toys R Us exclusive figures. There were 5 of them to represent 5 of the available generals, and they came with special dice. And these dice had an additional symbol of the general that the flag bearer served on them, and the army card had an ability that when dice were rolled, if you rolled any of the general symbols, it may activate something on the ability of the army card. Thanks, Laglore, for helping us demonstrate flag bearers. And just like in my other video when I'm just a little too lazy to get on and do all this right, the only real thing that the Age of Annihilation was introducing that was different than the old games was an interesting note is it only refers to commons and uniques, so the uncommon word seems to be going away, but it also introduced 2 life squads. So those are going to be treated like any other squad, however it would take 2 hit points to kill a figure rather than a normal 1. And they also seem to be getting rid of a lot of the words on the card to make room for more, art or powers or whatever. And again, this is a very early draft of the card. It could change and look wildly different by the time it comes out, but as of right now, this was their design. These bubbles are their point limit. The L7 is their height, and then there was their life, their movement, their range, their attack, and their defense. And because at this time there is no real physical representation that I can get of any of the Age of Annihilation content, nor was there anything beyond pictures of prototypes, multi-life squads would operate as follows. You would have these little tiny wound markers. As of right now, this could change, but you'd have these little tiny wound markers that, if they did not receive enough damage to eliminate the figure, it would likely sit on the base of the figure. So, like I said, just a quick video to introduce a couple of the different things that are upcoming for Heroscape, or that might be a little more difficult to acquire. just in case you wanted a quick refresher on the rules rather than watching a whole video. And after this series of videos, at this point in time, in 2023, I believe I have exhausted all of the official rules for Heroscape. Had a lot of fun making those videos, but one last point as I prepare for the 2024 relaunch of Heroscape from Renegade Games Studios. When they announced that the Age of Annihilation campaign content was coming to the game from the failed HasLab, one thing was clear to me, and that is the 99.99% chance that the future of Heroscape is unpainted miniatures. I'm going to take this time to just say I encourage you to get into the hobby, to try it out, get some paints, get a primer, get, miniatures to paint and practice on if you want, and thin your paints. But don't be too intimidated by the hobby. I know it can be time-consuming, it can be expensive, and, like I said, intimidating, but I do believe that it is rewarding when you get into it, and the same is going to be with Heroscape if you want to start painting it. The quality of the 2004 to 2010 miniatures is not good when put under scrutiny. In case you're really curious about that, look at the part where I zoom in on Sergeant Drake Alexander in my Swarm of the Morrow video. His head is painted into his helmet. But anyway, the point is that painting can be fun. If you're not interested in doing it yourself, you can probably find someone, a friend, family, or someone online that would be willing to paint your miniatures for you for a price. And again, nobody really wants to spend more money, but that is an option. There's also the option of just playing with them unpainted. They will come in the plastics that are the color of the general they serve. No confirmation on Valkrill yet, sorry. But anyway, they will be colored plastics. You can keep track of them on the board. And painted or not, they're still going to play the same. The great design of Heroscape is that the miniatures are all play-tested and fun, and maybe some of them might seem powerful or zany or weird or whatever, but that's just the joy of Heroscape. It is a great game. So I would encourage you to still explore it. If the unpainted option is a major turnoff to you for considering buying the game, I would just ask, as a huge fan of the game, for you to reconsider that. The game itself is awesome. The visuals of it don't change the fact that it was designed well, and it's really approachable, has themes and interest zones for all people that have a fan of a certain genre, history, sci-fi, fantasy, or whatever. But I'm rambling now. I digress. The final point, which I have made several times, is that Renegade Game Studios is relaunching Heroscape with no crowdfunding in 2024. As of this point, no content beyond the fact that the Age of Annihilation content from HasLab has been revealed, so we don't quite know what Renegade is going to do with the game beyond what we saw last year in the 2022 HasLab. But it is coming out, terrain packs, and team organized plays, and just various different things that they are going to do for the game, that they said they're really going to support the game and try and please all facets of the community. So, let's get excited.